You're listening to the Brick by Bit podcast. Welcome again, everybody, to the Brick by Bit podcast. This is episode 2, where we'll focus on developing a vision for digital design and construction. The Brick by Bit podcast is brought to you by DPW Digital Construction. We provide digital design and construction services to all industry stakeholders. When we start talking about this topic of developing a vision for digital design and construction, we're going to focus in on 3 main areas. The first one is, why is digital design and construction so important? We'll follow that up by looking at what parts of your business would digital design and construction impact. And then after that, look at headline topics for implementing digital design and construction. We look back at the introduction episode that we last had, and one of the things that we would have said of why we're doing this podcast is to look at the information that's out there for everybody. And kind of once again, we kind of come across things where digital design and construction is no-brainer. And here we feel that that's an absolute nonsense statement. If it impacts the way that you're actually working in your business, then it's not a no-brainer. It requires a significant amount of thought into, will we actually go down this road of bringing digital design and construction into our organization? Because it's going to change the work practices that we've had tried and tested for many years. So if you think that's a no-brainer decision to make, great. But I would feel that most of you out there will have to think about a lot of considerations when deciding to change work practice to go towards a more digital process. Whenever we kind of look at kind of major topics like this, we always want to go back and start with the why. If we don't understand why we're doing something, it gets lost. We might not get stakeholder buy-in. We might not really understand what our targets are that we're trying to achieve with this new implementation. So that's really where our focus starts. And even with starting with the why, we're breaking that down into 3 levels as well. The first one we're looking at is as at an organization level. So for you as a company, what does it mean, and why would we implement things as a company? This is the more kind of documented aspect of why you would implement digital design and construction that's out there at the moment. But there are 2 other areas that maybe not so obvious. The one is looking at it at a macro level. That what does this mean beyond just my company if this is headed for the industry, and even outside the industry for that matter. And then the third level is looking at it at a personal level. So what does this mean to the individuals in my company, or the individuals that we'll be working with on a day-to-day basis, how this impacts them, how this potentially positive impacts them working within the construction environment. So we'll start off with the organizational level. And one thing that I do in my spare time is I coach youth sports with my sons. And always looking to get better at that. So always kind of reading up on different topics. And one book that I would have come across recently, it's been out for a while now, is a book called How to Support a Champion by Steve Ingram. And one story he tells in the beginning of that, and who he is he's a physiologist that's very much focused in on data-driven decision-making. So straight away, kind of alarm bells, thinking, okay, this is actually now beyond the sports side of things. This is actually related to digital design and construction. And he tells a story of meeting, one of the top rowers in the UK, like an Olympic level rower. And when he first meets him and introduces himself, and everyone understands who he is, the athlete turns around and says, "Are you going to make me faster?" And we just saw this as something that we would have come across from an implementation point of view. Is companies coming to us, we're saying that there's digital design and construction, you can do this, you can do that, isn't this great? And what's going through their minds, and what's got to be going through your minds at the same time, is, okay, well, how is this going to benefit the company? It's great that this stuff exists, but right back to the boat, is it going to make us faster? Is this going to make my company perform better? Am I going to be able to see a commercial benefit from implementing this digital design and construction technology processes and everything else that goes with it. So really, the first bit of developing a vision is to focus, I think, on that part. Why are we going to do this for the company? And one thing we want to equate here is performance and risk. So if we can decrease the risk on our projects, then therefore we'll be increasing our performance. All sorts of risk, whether it's kind of going down to health and safety, scheduling, information delivery, the quality of information, quality of the built product. If we can use these tools to reduce that risk, we'll already be increasing our performance. And really that's where the focus of implementing digital design and construction really tends to lead itself towards. It does it in various different ways, various different formats, but really ultimately that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to reduce risk associated with the work that we do on construction projects, ranging from design through procurement, through decision-making processes, through construction, and then beyond into operation phases. A couple of statistics here that we have from a couple of construction reports. Fewer than 1/3 of all respondents' projects managed to come within 10% of the planned budget. So we have commercial risk that we're trying to manage. 1/4 of construction projects came within 10% of their original deadlines. So now we're dealing with scheduling risk. 9% of project cost is closer to the actual cost of rework. Now we're dealing with quality risks. So we're looking at these key indicators. Now these are happening at a large scale in kind of industry-wide publication. But if we distill that down, we can always distill those things down into our company performances and how we see things that are working with on projects that we work on, day to day. We see this type of performance all the time. It may not be the exact numbers, but we do see that budget risk is, quality risk, scheduling risk, all of that is a reality. And how do we use digital design and construction then to offset that? Right, and that's the key. When someone says, "Why are we doing this?" That's why. Full stop. Right. Anything else is some sort of subdivision of those things. Some sort of very specific way of saying this is how we're trying to deal with a particular risk. The one other area in terms of why is the term continuous improvement kind of is bandied about. Whenever we have our quality management systems, continuous improvement is always a part of that. As any company, they would turn around and say quality is very important to us. So this idea of continuous improvement also kind of comes into play. So if we're really about de-risking our projects to make some sort of commercial benefit for us, that's the number one goal that's there. And in addition to that, we have this kind of idea that we're going to try and continuously improve what we do. Again, always going back to that main goal of some sort of commercial benefit for us. That's what's happening at an organizational level. What does that translate to, right? So I mean, one thing, can we do our job better? What does better mean, right? So can we get more done faster, right? There's tools out there that will help us do that, right? So if we go back even to a very, straightforward tool of saying that we're going to be using Revit to produce design or construction information, the nature of that tool allows us to do different things at the same time. So we're working in one dimension, whether it's plan dimension, then we're also working in another dimensions, section, elevation. Those views, those documentation, if things are set up properly, are all being updated and created at the same time. So we're automatically saving some sort of time. Again, little proviso that that things are set up in a proper way. We have the capability and capacity to do that, right? So it's not as straightforward as just saying use Revit, you're okay. There's there's conditions to that for this example in this conversation we'll assume is correct. From a coordination system, all right, or coordination point of view, right? Building it once virtually, working out any sort of coordination issues at that stage. It's cheaper to do that in a box than it is to do it actually on site. So again, we're looking at reducing the risk by looking at a particular item, something that regularly causes issue on our projects that does have some sort of commercial risk. Can we change that by using particular technologies and techniques to flip that on its head? And now all of a sudden we're de-risking projects by doing that. Another way, thing to look at would be, we're going to say here, is systematic management and control of information, right? I want to use centralized, but that would be a bit of a misnomer in saying that all information is centralized. It's in one location. Okay, there's some truth to that, depending on the scope of the project and the different types of systems used. But in reality, information is still spread out a little bit. But if by bringing in digital design and construction processes, we can start to promote a system that helps us manage that, that information becomes easier to find. It becomes easier to manage, to track, to ensure that the correct information is available to the right stakeholders at the right time. Where we can look to take it to the next level, and the last three things are kind of really straightforward, nothing new there. That's being promoted time and time again. Whether we're talking about digital design and construction in a bigger picture, or we're specifically talking about BIM, where the real power could potentially come from for your company is when we start to use and combine data that we have in sort of different ways, right? So when we're talking about data, we're talking about all different types of sources. Our models that we provide, those 3D models that are produced in Revit or whatever program that you're using, that's data, right? So we have a 3D visual data for people to use. Whether it's information about different assets or different products that's held off in spreadsheets or other formats, that's data as well. We have schedules, right? These things are typically standing alone. They're in their own software applications. They're used for a particular purpose, and then after that primary purpose, they tend to be left alone. But if we start looking at combining those sources, we now have a real way of starting to integrate how we do different things, and that means everyone's on the same page. So we can kind of look to see, how can I plan my delivery better? Just as one particular example. So we can be combining the information that's in our models, the visual information, to combine that with our schedules. And we can have a construction simulation that we can visually see how the project is going to go, not just interpreting the lines of tasks and relationships that are in a well-formed schedule. But we can also start extracting other information from that model in a different way, and then we can start looking at how the model objects, or translating that into construction product quantities, can then be brought into that equation. And now we're starting to understand different aspects of our project. At any given moment in time, using traditional methods, do we really know the current status of the project? The different stakeholders from different perspectives are going to have different answers for that same question at any given moment in time. If we can start to pool that information together, by making those connections between the different data, or just information points, collections of information, all of a sudden we can start to look at project progress, coming from a same lens or a similar lens, or a lens that's using everybody's best information at that available time to make proper estimates or proper decisions based on that information. The last bit is learning from your data. So obviously, ideally what we're looking to do, can I get to a point where I'm getting it right, the first time that I'm doing something, whether it is kind of, going from designing to construction, or actually kind of when we're looking at construction on site, how do we make sure that we're doing it right the first time, and trying to, reduce the risk associated with rework. The best way we can do is to learn from that. Again, it ties back into combining the data. So what we're looking to do is say, okay, we know we have this particular information that's located, say, in a model. We also can look to see, okay, how do we integrate that aspect of things with maybe some site corrective information, whether it's trying to make a link between what we have on site in an inspection record with kind of a model object. So then when we come across those things later on in future projects, or maybe even later on in the same project, light bulbs can go off and say, we have a risk here. We dealt with it previously. We've learned from it previously. Let's make sure that we've implemented that going forward. So, again, to reduce the risk that's associated with rework on a project. And that's just one particular example. Look, I mean, if ideally, again, from a productivity point of view, if we don't know what our productivity information is and what our performance actually is at that level, how are we making those assumptions, whether it's coming from a budget assumption, or a pricing assumption, all that's being based on something. Do we have that data available to us? Well, if we're using digital design and construction, we can be recording that information over time. And then once it's recorded, we can then look to reuse that in a different way from an analysis. And then based on that analysis, again, come up with conditions associated with that analysis, and then reuse that to say, okay, this is what we expect our performance to be the next time around. So we can be more accurate in our pricing and in our expectations for projects moving forward. One other area from an organizational point of view to consider is staff as well. We've done a good bit of training over the past several years in DPW digital construction. And one of the key factors for engaging the training process is companies are looking to say, well, my staff is coming to me saying, I want to be upskilled, I don't want to be left behind. So it becomes kind of a retention issue as well, to kind of say that if we're going to kind of trust that our staff kind of understands the industry, and we want them to have the best tools and the best knowledge that's available to us, that'll help us kind of keep that staff. Whereas if they see they can go somewhere else to develop themselves personally, that is one key factor that we know. Team members and why they move from company to company, that is certainly one of the key factors. Which then now we have, what's the cost of retaining our staff versus the cost of new staff acquisition, and are we going to end up having to train those members of the new members of the team anyway, to bring them up to speed, because we're going to want to have the correct knowledge base for the projects that we're working on at that moment in time. And that kind of ties into the third area that we're going to look at from an organization, or from the reasons why perspective, that BIM is so important when we start looking at the personal side of things. But look, what I want to just kind of do then change gear from the organizational, and then start looking at kind of a slightly bigger picture. Now, this is something that it's a bit loose than kind of the previous section where we talked about the organizational benefits. When we start looking at the back macro benefits, one thing we take a look at is kind of, the size of the construction market is massive, right? So I mean, just look at Ireland alone. 2020 forecast was about 18 billion. In the UK, 2019 was about 120 billion. In the US, the same time period, US construction spending was around 1.3 trillion dollars. That's a huge amount of money. So even if we look also just at construction employment, again here in Ireland, about 129,000 people involved in construction. In the UK, 1.28 million. In the US, 10.2 million construction workers back in 2019. So it's a lot of money and a lot of people that are impacted by construction. So look, while it's not a direct correlation, kind of looking at it from a social perspective is to say, okay, if performance isn't at 100% level, okay, we're never going to get to 100%, but if we're striving towards that, but if we're missing deadlines and we're missing budgets, where's that money going? There's an element of waste there. Can that finance be used somewhere else? And kind of, it's not a direct correlation, but a correlation that is similar there. Is that the construction costs are very similar to the healthcare costs in Ireland and the UK in terms of spending. So if can we take that the waste that's associated with that and then reallocate that to something else from a social perspective that's a bit more useful. It's not a direct the money goes here therefore it goes there if it's saved. But it's just something to think about in terms of what can these resources be used for if we're not wasting it on errors and other risks that are happening on projects that we know about. Now, look from a personal level, going back to the stats on construction employment, it's a lot of people. It's a lot of people around the globe that are involved in construction. And kind of one thing that is important, we feel is important, and a lot of companies feel is important, and we're seeing it more and more coming to light in different forums. Is trying to understand, is the construction industry a positive working environment? Everyone says they want it to be, but let's kind of understand kind of is it? So a few more numbers here. 82% of workers in building and construction were stressed at least some of the time during a typical week. Okay, they're stressed. Kind of, we have to accept that there's a bit of stress there, but that's a high number. But then if we translate that, 82,000 cases of ill health were reported in the construction sector. 25% of those related to mental health, including stress, anxiety, and depression. That's a high percentage of illness associated to something that's not a kind of a direct injury. To things. And kind of in researching this particular topic, one thing that and this next one that kind of came out was the construction industry has the highest incidence of suicide by occupation. Something I didn't know at all. And you kind of saying, okay, we have this thing now, digital design and construction. How can we help that? That's a serious issue there. We're talking about changing work practices through this medium and the methodology of digital design and construction. Surely one thing that we have to look at is there a positive or negative impact of digital design and construction on people that are working in the industry? Looking at a couple of different areas is that we have these tools and we have these processes. Can they improve and increase someone's personal sense of value and decrease stress? Right? Those would be the two things that we would be looking to see. Can we do this with digital design and construction? So can we take out? First thing that an obvious one is, well, if we start taking out some non-value adding tasks, so we take out some counting and we push that more towards the humans as decision making, that's going to provide more value for those people. In kind of any sort of human resources kind of courses and discourse that we've been involved with, that's been a big kind of issue. In terms of also staff retention, as well was the context of the things we've attended, and it focuses in on if people feel valuable, they will tend to stay. If people feel valuable, they will tend not to have the same levels of stress as if they do feel invaluable by doing kind of tasks that can potentially be done based on or with the tools and methodologies associated with digital design and construction. A couple of other ideas that kind of we've had in this area. If we have better information and more transparent information, does that reduce conflict? So the pre-construction coordination, coming up with objective means for measuring things that are happening on site, or things that are happening, design changes. If we're using the digital tools correctly and in a particular way that is obvious, is objective, then we should be able to reduce some of the stress that's associated with that, where different interpretations of things can be mitigated, if not eliminated. And it's looking at ultimately how we're making things less adversarial. If we look at where the origins of stress are, it probably goes back a lot of ways to the adversarial nature of the construction industry and how it's traditionally been. So if we kind of go back kind of 2 steps to the organization level of things, and we discussed what if we use that data for learning, we can kind of keep paying that forward, because if one thing we can learn about is any sort of flashpoint issues that then potentially cause high levels of stress within the stakeholder staff and stakeholder teams. For those, so look, one of the things, a couple of areas, kind of defect detection. If we're finding out where those defects are, using the models properly at the proper time, we can then eliminate all that stress that's going to happen later on, where all of a sudden there's lots of pressure, there's a lot more money involved in these decisions and these issues. Let's knock it on its head kind of earlier on. The quantity extraction for variations we see as kind of a huge one. If we can kind of develop models in a particular way that allows us for rapid and accurate quantification, it can be down to the case where it's there or it's not, kind of in the model, and then therefore be transferred onto site. And also being able to early warning systems for schedule slippage. Things do happen on site, and they will continue to happen. We can use digital design and construction to try and reduce when that happens. But if we're really taking a data-centric approach to our project planning and our scheduling, we can quickly identify where things are starting to slip and what those knock-on impacts are. And if we know them early, we can deal with them at a time where it will be less stressful than would be happening kind of later on. This personal level, kind of thing, is more and more of a reality. In the current workplace, in the current kind of social climate as well. For people to really understand the impact that stress has on people's mental health. And if we're in high stress environments like construction, how do we actually go about trying to mitigate that? So look, the next aspect. So we looked at the why there. A few different examples of in different scales of why digital design and construction is important. Again, all those things for you to kind of think about, kind of assess how that fits within your organization. But let's kind of look at a couple of other impacts as well, because that's hugely going to impact obviously your vision for how you want to implement digital design and construction, if at all. I imagine that you would. Just again, based on some of the impacts, the reasons why, as well as potential some value in the impacts that we'll discuss now. And look, you can come up. We always say this kind of broad statement. Digital design and construction impacts everything. Which look, I think is true. Okay, it's trying to be a bit dramatic about the whole thing. But look, driving down into some specifics. Look, from the physical assets point of view, you're going to have to make an investment in technology, right? And that's looking at from the hardware side and the software side. There's decisions that need to be made kind of on what's more appropriate. Where's the value associated with that? Does this bit of kit offer me what I need to do, or is it too much and I need to look at other sources? And the other side of the software side of things is this doing exactly how I work or how I need it to work, or do I need to look at kind of combining different applications to get what I'm trying to get out of this out of digital design and construction? And that kind of thing happens kind of all the time, where we're constantly saying, okay, well this application does very well at some sort of visualization, but this actually does a bit better at defect detection or recording. Or managing kind of coordination issues that we find in models. So that those assessments always have to take on, and all of those assets, those digital assets, hardware, software, has a cost associated with them. And look, it's not just about kind of acquiring the technology. It's also that it needs to be supported, right? So there's going to be training involved, recurring maintenance costs to keep the applications. The different services that you might need to help use those applications a bit differently. So there's investment there, just not in the acquisition, but also the ongoing use of those applications. People, huge, right? So, and I would say that this is the number one impact that needs to be assessed. This would be the number one thing that we see is the thing that drives people away from digital design and construction or not using it to its full potential, and it's down to skills. Do we have the skills in-house to leverage the new technology, the new processes, the new connections we can make with different people in the value stream on projects or in the industry? If the answer is no, we can only do one of two things. We have to look at training our existing team, or we need to bring in people that do have these skills. The one way or another, where it's bringing them in our team, looking at outsourcing certain things, and then using the information and or the services that are being provided. But this is the number one killer that we see of when digital design and construction doesn't work. It almost always boils down to, do we have the skills to do what we say we're going to do, or get the most out of the technology and processes? Keeping that kind of thing in mind, what's the value for me doing this, right? From a people perspective. We just talked before about kind of making construction a safe and welcoming environment for people. We want to maximize what the value we get out of our staff, and it boils down to the decision-making process. The decisions that people make, their interactions with other people, are really what we're looking to pay our staff for. We're looking to use the machines to do what the machines do best, stuff that we can take away from people so they have the time, they have the information to make better decisions on our projects. Another aspect, we talked about before, about when we talked staff retention, is that people do want to be part of an innovative team. Without a doubt, no one wants to get left behind. And they want to be excited about what they do. Like we said back in the introduction, every day is a learning day from a digital design and construction perspective. So as we're kind of engaging with new technology, new ways of working, new people, we learn from that, and then we look to kind of take that over, and we're part of that innovation team within a company. Can be very important for people that are working with you. Another aspect is kind of understanding that problems with digital design and construction, so there is risks associated with it, primarily down to skills acquisition, is that there will be pain points, right? And those pain points just need to be listened to and addressed. So kind of one thing we've seen in different implementations, so just one example, and this again always goes back to skills, is that some of them really develops their understanding of how the different technology works, how it comes together, how it's used to produce whether it's from a design perspective information, or how it can be used on site, and they become the go-to person. And that's fine on one project probably, but then all of a sudden 2, 3, 4, and they become just completely swamped by being the single point of reference for all things digital within the company. If that's a pain point that becomes obvious, then again, that's just an example. It's something that needs to be listened to and addressed at a company level. Otherwise, again, we're looking at kind of staff retention, the staff acquisition, the costs associated with both of those. From a work practices perspective, bidding for work, what's the delivery time, what's the cost associated with this new way of working, where am I getting my value to offset costs from other aspects of what I do. For example, if we're building in a certain amount of risk into fee structures, can we reduce that risk to make ourselves a bit more competitive by using technology in the best way that's possible. Do we fully understand kind of the scope of work that needs to be done, and by understanding the scope of work that needs to be done, have we priced accordingly so we don't end up with an issue later down the road where expectations are a bit off when it comes to, say, client and service provider, that people aren't seeing eye to eye because we had different understandings of what was required, and potentially didn't fully understand the impact of statements that were made. So we see that in kind of information requirements all the time, where it's easy to put in a one-liner for certain things. One example we can look at is say laser scanning. That that one-liner of saying that we want everything laser scanned to XX tolerance. That takes time. That takes effort to achieve that. And does everyone understand what that actually means? Does everyone actually understand what that is going to be useful for? And is it going to be a high value add to a project later on? In some cases, it's yes. In other cases, maybe not so much. And we can look at alternative methods for recording that as bit data, or kind of understanding the full scope of what's going to be required in that laser scanning requirement to break it down into identifying the most useful areas at the most useful time, and then focusing in on that, right? So right again, a one-liner has huge amounts of implications. Do we understand what all those implications actually are? In terms of execution, look, model creation is different, than 2D drawing, creation. So, what are those deliverables going to be used for? Is it just communicating a design intent, or is something going to be used for installation? Can we use that information that we have to really support a high level of integration with the documentation and information we produce with the act of building on site? So are we providing things in different formats that to help us speed up something else later down the road, right? So can we develop these models to a certain level of accuracy with a certain level of detail that we can then transfer over to somebody that's surveying things on site, and using that to set out in a way that's highly accurate and very fast. The ties very much into what are my deliverables, right? Because my deliverables now aren't just going to be real, in terms of physical deliverables. There's going to be virtual deliverables that we need to provide as well. So do we understand all the implications of providing a real and a virtual deliverable? What level of information needs to be consistent across? What are the limitations of particularly say the visual model, or the virtual deliverable? Making sure that we fully understand that. Another impact management, right? How are we measuring performance? Because previously you may have had a particular methodology for understanding the cost and time associated with a particular scope of work, because you knew that X amount of drawings takes X amount of time. That's going to change, if we're looking at using models to produce deliverables, or using models to provide information in different formats that are used differently on site. Even kind of construction sequencing, the turnaround time, one of the kind of risk associated with, I would say, doing construction simulations is, if that reporting is expected a bit more often, then a bit of time needs to be brought into the equation to facilitate updating the schedule. And now we're updating, say, the visual component of that in the simulation. Processes may timelines may need to alter a little bit to accommodate these other benefits that we're trying to achieve. In terms of coordination issue, closeout, and methods of inspection, all these are kind of related back to how we're dealing with, say, model defects. So we talked previously about building the model twice. We can identify defects in a virtual stage before they become real. But how do we actually manage and deal with those and make sure they get closed out in a timely fashion, or at least to make sure that they've been de-risked as much as they possibly can be de-risked before they become real potential issues on site. The quality assurance, the standards and procedures that that may be in your organization for years will likely be tweaked. They'll be changed a bit, to deal with the new processes, the new understanding, the new standards that are available. That potentially need to be complied with for particular clients, projects, or even kind of your own internal development of what you want to do with this digital design and construction implementation. The positive environmental impacts as well. Look, paper versus electricity. Which costs more. asset recycling, all different things that kind of directly and then say indirectly, because we can be using digital design and construction methods to support other initiatives, LEED or BREEAM, in terms of getting information to support those, kind of an indirect thing, or the more direct thing of what happens if we do become a more paperless organization. What does that do for kind of our carbon footprint in the world? And look, again, there's a list of impacts that are there. Again, we're kind of looking at it at a fairly high level. As you look at it in your own organization, you're going to have to go kind of dig down into a little bit more detail. Because you'll be dealing with specific people, you'll be dealing with specific things that you do, potentially specific services and products that you guys provide. Is going to be slightly different than kind of these high level topics. So again, hope you kind of listen, kind of learn from some of these things. Just keep in mind that you're going to have to interpret kind of these impacts and really assess those impacts kind of in terms of your organization dealing with the specific conditions. So if we're starting to BIM vision, right? So first thing, okay, we know we assess why we're going to do that, right? That's the first thing that we're looking to do. So when we're looking to assess, the why we're doing this, one key thing that's important, we think, for businesses is understanding what the business strategy is, in particular the objectives. Because if we have a clear business strategy and particularly clear objectives, we can then target those objectives with the appropriate technology, people, training, all those things that we can say, okay, we know what our priorities are. And those priorities are going to be based on our key business objectives. We can go through and assess, okay, what are our strengths, weaknesses, what gaps do we need to fill, do we have any outside influences that we need to worry about. One of the key outside influences is going to be client requirements. Okay? While you can kind of, after you kind of receive a couple of those documents, you can start to see patterns. So the longer you get involved kind of in digital design construction and projects that require that need to be implemented, you will see the patterns and you will get a deeper or at least a superficial but most likely deeper understanding of what is going to be required to deliver on those projects and meet those requirements. But it's a variable that you can't control. If you're bidding for a particular project, or you're on a project and there's going to be potential change with information requirements, you're dependent on kind of what the client is looking for, and then again have to react to that accordingly. But in terms of strengths and weaknesses within the organization, those are things that you can control. And then as long as we understand those, again aligned with business objectives, we can then really target the correct levels of implementation and investment that's required to meet those objectives. Once we have the priorities, it's maintaining focus on those priorities. Something always comes up that's kind of a little bit different. Something new is always on the horizon when it comes to digital design and construction. It's obviously we need to be aware of those things. But really focusing on identifying what those priorities are and focusing and maintaining focus on those is what will lead to more successful implementation. We've seen kind of companies that start going down one particular road and focusing on, say, quite small steps, towards it and looking at it from a very sustainable point of view, and then for some jump to adding in another level of technology that nobody was really prepared for. Everybody was focusing on kind of starting to develop their skills, and now they're being thrown kind of a new bit of kit that now needs to be used on project because now it needs to start making money for us. It distracts from the overall vision and from the overall path that you're trying to implement. Sometimes things happen and changes, and again, outside influences may cause that. But it's really to look to say we're developing our course, we're going to stay the course and develop this, and our capabilities in a very consistent and sustainable way. So again, when we're implementing those things, what's the approach to try and do? We kind of have a 3-step approach that we would usually take. The one based on kind of either if we're looking for developing our own skills in-house, or looking at it from an implementation point of view for one of our clients, we've identified what the priorities are. First thing we want to do is we want to commit to those priorities. That's what we're going to do. That's where we're going to focus our energy. That's where we're going to focus our purchasing. And then once we have that, we're going to test it. We will all have kind of ideas or plans or how it's been done previously on other projects or in other organizations. But let's test to see, does it work? And then we're going to have to adapt, right? We're going to have to adapt to particular technologies or processes that don't quite work. The kind of one example we can kind of raise would be, say, the quality assurance associated with ISO 19650, which would be a standard for information management through BIM. You can take kind of a very, very hard approach towards things in terms of, say, checking, in quality control, and how you document that in particular, where it may look good on paper, but in practice becomes very, very cumbersome. And then we have to look at alternative ways to ensure that the quality checks are happening, but maybe are documented in a little more simplified, streamlined sort of way. It again makes it actually possible, more practical and possible to do within, with commercial constraints and time constraints applied to them. You need the resources to execute. So once we have kind of the vision and the plan in place, we need to be able to do it, and it boils down to, do we have the technology and the people to do it? We have to make investments. There's no getting away from that. Are we making the right investment? And in particular, from the people point of view, investment needs to be made in getting their buy-in. If we don't have buy-in from the people that are going to be, one, doing things day to day, or two, the people that are making decisions in terms of making sure that this is fitting within the business strategy and the business objectives, it's not going to work. And it means that there's a lot of listening that kind of obviously needs to take place. And then a lot of action associated with those listenings to get that potential buy-in. And a lot of it's directed towards, it's slightly selfish, but it's going down to look at different people and say, okay, this is what's in it for you, right? So it goes back to kind of that example, regarding kind of Steve Ingram. Is this going to make me faster, right? Is this going to give me a benefit? Is this going to reduce my stress? If the answers are yes, and you can demonstrate that, then you'll get buy-in. If the answer is no, it's actually going to make it worse, well, then you're going to be in trouble. And it boils down to, it won't end up being implemented, or it won't be implemented in the way that you envisioned, or that gets you the most benefit overall. So it's to kind of understand where the individual person's expectations, as well as impact, is going to be applied once it gets to deciding that this is the correct way to go from either a kind of technology point of view or a process point of view. Going back to the biggest risk associated with digital design and construction that we see, capability and capacity. Do we have it? We need it. Then we need to we need to acquire it somehow. We covered that before. And look, is there an external option that works for us either permanently or for a certain amount of time while we get our feet under us. All things to take a look at. Again, all those ones we just mentioned in terms of the approach, in terms of for yourself to develop a vision for digital design and construction. A couple other ones that kind of don't make the mainstream digital design and construction forums is one thing that we would kind of look at is identifying what aspects of our business strategy and our business objectives, as well as potential digital design and construction implementation, are research and development versus which are ones that are going to help us today. That helps big time with buy-in. So if we kind of come up with either a technical solution or a process that'll then lend itself to an immediate result or immediate benefit for people, they'll jump on that straight away. If it's something that's a bit of kind of a wait and see, well then the time and a bit of leeway needs to be allocated towards that, because if it's an R&D type project, and we've been involved in a couple of those with different companies, is it may not work. Or it may not deliver the result that we're looking for. And we need to be open to that, and we need to kind of explore different avenues with it to make sure that it either doesn't, and we know in our heart of hearts we did our best, but it doesn't work the way we want, or it works in a different way, so we need to potentially change something else to get it to work. So it's to identify that, kind of straight on and communicate that within the team, so that they know something that's now going to impact projects today, versus something that we're exploring and potentially will impact this project now, but really we're looking at it for future implementation. Do not believe everything you hear. Okay, and I would say even the stuff that I'm talking to you about now, you take it and you assess how it actually applies to you and your company. Look at other sources of information, and make sure that kind of what you're kind of consuming, from a information perspective, whether it be conferences, magazines, all sorts of different things, other podcasts, is to take what you hear, kind of understand that it's someone's experience, and someone's thought process around this, and it may not mesh 100% with yours. So don't make changes because you heard someone say something. It's understand what someone has said, understand what you've read, and then do a bit of internal analysis to see, is this right for us? Does this work or not? Or needs to be changed to apply to us? And the difficult one, probably the one that probably requires kind of the most amount of effort and thought, is measuring, and measure things in detail. A lot of people don't like being measured, but the reality is that's the only way we can really understand where we're at given a certain level of implementation. So how are we using this particular product? Are we using it as a company? Okay, we are using it. Is this as fast as it was previously? Are we getting different quality of information versus what we did previously? Is this leading us to have less potential issues further down the road when things are more expensive? Then are we catching things at an early stage? Is our productivity levels being hit or is it not? And to assess what that actually is, and that'll give you a bit of opportunity to look back at what you've done, in terms of implementation, and kind of say, okay, here are the areas that we potentially need to change. To meet, again, always going back to the why and always going back to our business strategy and our business objectives. So look, in summary, what do we talk about today? Again, we were looking at, what are the components for developing an overall vision for digital design and construction implementation. We kind of looked at kind of a few different reasons why and a few different scales of why digital design and construction is important. We took a look at what parts of our business does digital design and construction impact. And that's after saying the overall statement of everything. And again, headline topics for developing an approach to digital design and construction. So, again, at a very high level, kind of a few key points that you would need to kind of have a look at when trying to successfully implement digital design and construction. Well, look, that's it for this podcast. Just to remind you, we can be contacted by email at contact@brickbybitpodcast.com, the website brickbybitpodcast.com, on Twitter and Instagram at brickbybit. And if you're interested in looking at some of our technical training videos, we have that on Patreon at patreon.com/brickbybit. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.